till we get someone else. So, but if you'd like to begin,
Let me get this stronger, sorry, just to be safe. You need to for your,
So we share it.
yes. There it is. Do you want me to do it as a, like click from beginning slideshow?
But that's fine.
That's. I don't know if it's going to go.
Wow. Open it up first. Like you get it open up first and then share it. You should do that with control it.
The problem is it took up my whole screen, so I couldn't get back to the Zoom to click share screen.
That must be.
So when okay, so when I do it from here, I go like this.
I'm not sure what you said.
If I choose like that,
But maybe this might.
well, and if I click the share screen, or maybe then can I go over and start it?
Yeah, it should be on the control, so.
Okay, I think we just take forms.
we just for.
Close out the order and then get.
So let's call the meeting to order then. Joanna, if you call the roll.
All right, Ken Whitfield,
Present.
James Hurston,
Here.
Mark Phelan,
Here.
Alan Hart,
Here.
Ray Dotson. Okay, Mark Terry.
Here.
Todd Wolf asked to be excused. Karen Ferrera. Here. Teresa asked to be excused as well. Martin Holman.
Here.
We have Councilmember Mike Renser.
Yeah.
We have Chief Mike Zarro back with us. And for Assistant Chief Scott Adams, we have Captain Matt Garrels. Did I say that right?
Yep, you did. Hello, everyone.
And then no youth council.
Okay.
And we have Ray Dotson.
Hey, you wonder why I'm long. I don't know this time either. Okay, can we quickly, does everyone take a look at the minutes? Oh, does anybody have any questions about the minutes? Can we take a second to that? Is there a second? A second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, minutes have been approved. There are no public comments unless anybody written in. Okay. Okay, gentlemen, you're on.
We're on. And do I come on first?
Yes.
All right. Well, first of all, I'll introduce myself. I'm Scott Williams. I'm the operations superintendent for the city of Lakewood. I've been with the city for about a little over 20 years. And my duties as assigned are everything maintenance. So I'm responsible for the streets department. So all the right-of-way maintenance, anything that happens in the right of way other than police work, we're responsible for that, utilities. I also do parks maintenance, so I have a crew that runs all the parks. We have street landscaping, which are all the street landscaping throughout the city. Those are your moat strip, your gateway signs, the real properties, this facility, city hall, sound station, and then our two shops. They work there. I also do the facilities maintenance for the buildings that the city owns and operates, which includes the sounder station. Other duties as assigned. Oh, I also do fleet maintenance for the non-police vehicles, or not fleet maintenance, fleet management. Other people do the maintenance, but so I have a lot of little fingers in a lot of different things around the city. So I know a little bit about the city and how things operate. So one of the things that I was asked to do was talk about garbage program collection here in the city and how we accomplish that. And I can only speak to what the operations and maintenance side does. Michael's going to talk about the citywide collection dates. So I just kind of put this really quick together. We run a program, it's called My Liquid 311, and it's a program where citizens, city staff, us included, we put in requests for when there's an issue throughout the city. Where that could be anything from, a dead squirrel in the road to a tree has fallen and is, taken out of street light, and you have to go take care of that. So what I did is I just pulled out from the beginning of 311, which was 2016. I pulled out 3 categories, which are appliances and furniture, garbage O&M, which is our operations and maintenance of streets, and then parks garbage. So I pulled those 3 categories out and just did a quick snapshot from 2016 through present, and just kind of go to the next one if you can. Down arrow, I think. Not sure. Yeah, there you go.
Too many?
Oh, too many. We skipped a couple years. The other way.
One more?
No, you're going the wrong way. Go back. You're up to 21.
Which way am I going now? Nope,
You're going towards the end of the slideshow.
all the wrong buttons.
Can I do it there, right here? Oh. No, it pulled up the other screen.
I'm going right here.
First slide.
Is that better?
Okay, so yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. So in 2016, this is when we implemented 311s, and what this is what they call a heat map of the 426 requests for the 3 garbage categories that I talked about. That's kind of where they were spread out throughout the city. So you have your Tillicum neighborhood, Woodbrook. This is your Springbrook neighborhood and Pacific Highway corridor. This is kind of the downtown Bridgeport. It's not really the corridor, but that neighborhood. And so you can kind of see that's where things concentrated. The light ones are maybe 1 or 2, 3, 4 requests throughout the year. And you can see we had 426 requests, which in 2016 was 34% of all of our requests.
Where's town center?
Where's what?
Town center, where's city?
Town center would be somewhere right here. There's a little thing that says Lakewood
Okay.
Town. So right about there, that's just south of town center. So the high school, that neighborhood in there. So then we moved on to 2017, and you'll see a theme throughout this. Requests start going up. People get used to the app. We, along with social media, Bryn, I think Bryn was here back then, or maybe they did a good push and got the information out, the messaging out, and people started to use the app more. You can see that about 29% of our requests were garbage related, and we had, increased 578. You can start to see that heat map starts to pick up. It's a little bit brighter orange and yellow throughout the city. So as we go on to 18, you'll see the heat map will go up a little bit more in different areas. And of course, then the requests will also go up. This heat map down here, you see, Tillicum, Woodbrook really took off. I don't want to touch things. And then kind of this main Bridgeport corridor, the cross section, like 112th to 100 Street or so, and then Springbrook, picks up quite a bit. So again, people are starting to use it. Roughly 32% of our requests. See if I can see over.
Tapping the screen stuff.
Well, she's sharing the screen, so I don't. This isn't the program. I'm thinking. So then 2019, you see the big jump. We went from what did I say, about 578 requests up to 904. It's 45% of all of our requests now. And by this time, 2019, we're really using 311 to drive what we're doing. And it's taking a lot of effort to do it. I didn't get into the staffing. There are 4 street maintenance workers in the city and 1 lead, and they're tasked with all the maintenance in the city, unless it's too big for what we can handle, and then it's contracted out. So the garbage is not something that's too big to handle, so that's a lot of stuff, a lot of what we do. We have 2 dump trailers, and, you know, 2 teams go out and they fill them, take them over to LeMay. Before that, we used to dump it on the ground, load a dumpster, LeMay would come get it. And it's much more efficient now than what it was. So in 2019, we had kind of a large jump. You can see the heat map. Are there any questions or comments, anything? I don't want to cut anybody off the staff.
Can I clarify one thing for everybody too? Is just keep in mind, that this is not, none of this is on private property. This is all public right of way, either in the streets or on sidewalks or medians, things like that. There might be the rare exception where they get something from private property, but that is a rare exception. So all these, these areas where they're picking up garbage, that's actually from the road or from public right of way.
Over. Homes are almost cleanups included in this.
There's a separate category for homeless. I didn't include that because that really didn't start picking up until right before COVID and then after COVID. And we're actually doing a pilot program where we're contracting out the homeless cleanups. This is the state, because it's such a large issue throughout the state. They put together a contract through the Department of what's it called? Department of Health. No, it's I can't think of the name, but it's like the same. We're surplus and fleet and all these something DES. Enterprise services. So they put together all the state contracts. They identified this as an issue. So they did all the bidding and vetting and all that. So we have a list of contractors that we can call for small sites, large sites, or sites that have issues that we don't want our staff to go into, that it's a safety issue, and we want to put that liability on somebody else. So if it's full of needles, steep slope, in a wetland, areas like that, that's what we're looking. Now we contract that stuff out. The staff really appreciates that.
Is there I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is there do you divide this up with illegal dumping, or is that something that is a category in and of itself or not? And if there is there any kind of way is there a process to mitigate illegal dumping or?
Well, it's all illegal. And no, there's for us, there's not a process to mitigate it. We don't have any of that authority. We're just there to clean it up. It's really difficult to prosecute or even to identify, somebody who has just gone, and this happens more than we think. Roofers will literally drive down the dark street, and as they're driving, raise their bed and just dump it as they're driving in the middle of the road. And then we have to respond to that and clean it up. Sometimes it's in the middle of the night and a crew has to come in to do that, which that's frustrating for everybody. But fortunately, that doesn't happen all of it. It's not a normal occurrence, but it does happen.
Is there a way to we let the public know, or we try to do public outreach to neighborhood watch and that sort of thing? Is there a way to sort of let the public know, that keep their eyes out for this kind of thing that's happening? And then I just can't imagine that this is, I sent a picture in one day because somebody dumped an engine on the side of the road. It's just like, really, but this must cost taxpayers a lot of money.
Like what Stan's saying, using your heat map, putting up signs and see something, say something, kind of getting the neighborhoods involved, because they don't want to see this in their neighborhood either.
Sure, no, I agree. That is something that we could work with our communications department with, and they do social media, blast, they can do mailers, when it's a specific neighborhood, they can identify, that and they'll send out a card.
Scott, the other thing to think of, and I'm not sure if this is the road you're going down, but for any kind of enforcement, that takes, manpower afterwards to do the investigation part of that. If we do get a license plate, it's a matter of tracking that person or that vehicle down, trying to identify who's driving it or who was driving it at the time, and then building that kind of a case. That takes people, and we might have a license plate or something like that of somebody that did some illegal dumping. If we have patrol officers that are there, if somebody calls 911 right away, they might be able to respond. But the investigative resources on the other end, if we don't have immediate response, are kind of limited for this level of investigation.
The signage would at least be deterrent. Before someone dumps out their Kentucky Fried Chicken bag or something.
Sure. I don't want to get into too much, but manpower is, it is a problem for us. We have, like I said, we have 4 maintenance workers in the streets. And for the last year, I've been down 3, well, not quite a year. I've been down 2 for a year, and then we had somebody leave in April. And that left me 1 maintenance worker and a lead to do all the maintenance in the city. That became very difficult to get everything done. And so while they were trying to do garbage, the maintenance worker actually injured his back and was on restricted duty for several months. He's back to normal. We actually just hired somebody new yesterday. So we're building back up. We now have another one starting on the 16th. So we'll only be down 1, but it's that time management of, do we have time to just collect the garbage, to just fill potholes, to just, that's where we're kind of focused on, just getting the work done. We haven't had the luxury of doing, kind of some of those other things.
Yeah, I would think, I get things about garbage both in the park and in the right of way. But I get a lot of emails that are, people use my level 311, but after they do it, I get a lot of emails that are mostly complimentary about how quickly something is done. Generally within a week, things are there. And I don't get a lot of emails about enforcement, criminal things to do that. I think the community is first of all concerned about keeping neighborhoods clean and healthy and attractive to be able to go and do that. And they do appreciate the effort that it goes into that, and being able to do that. And they particularly appreciate the timing of stuff. What goes on. Just to get the number of requests down, I think that earlier you said this is a roll-up of the request for appliances and furniture, the request for garbage, and the request for parks trash. Those 3 things are rolled into your number.
Correct, and I included parks because, again, with the limited staffing that we have, and we don't get a lot of reports of trash in the parks in comparison to what we get in the streets. I think I took one of the years, I think it might have been 2016, and I separated them out. And of the 426, there were 10 that were reported in parks. However, they all work together. And so the park staff, if they're driving down the road and they see something that needs to be addressed, if it's off the side of the road, the park staff aren't focused on that. But if they see stuff, they pick it up. If it's in the road, they also go out with the O&M guys when we do homeless camp cleanups, and it's all hands on deck. Every person's involved. The last homeless camp we did over there on, roughly about 87th and Bridgeport. There's a rock wall. At the end of the rock wall, it kind of drops off into the wetland. Everybody was working that day on the homeless camp. We took, we did 26, it was 26,000 pounds out of that homeless camp that day, and it's all done by hand. So it's a wetland area, and we're not allowed to take equipment down into the wetland. So all of that is, that's why everybody's, all hands on deck, because it's handing it to the next person on up the hill, and that's shopping carts, mattresses, tents, cook stoves, where they use the restroom, all that stuff. It's a very nasty, dirty job. They have every PPE available to them, from Tyvek suits, full respirator, everything's available to them when we get into that nasty situation. But I didn't include the homeless in stuff in here because we really had the uptick in homeless right before COVID and then thereafter. And I really wanted to just focus on the citywide garbage that we have. And so you'll see in 2020, we actually dropped, and thank COVID for that, but it dropped from 900 and some to 832. So not really that significant of a drop. Throughout COVID, all the maintenance staff were here working every day, so they continued to do the garbage cleanups, and you see that we went to 42%. I think it was 41 in the previous year. And so the trend is it just keeps going up. And like Mr. Brandstetter said, our response on it, so how a workflow is put in, you submit a 311, that workflow has a certain number of days for us to respond to the request and then to complete and close the task out. So garbage might have a 2-week window for us to be able to get out and get that done. Graffiti might have 3 days, to do. So it changes depending on what the workflow is for each task. We run about a 97% on average, I'd say, of getting everything closed out on time. There are the occasions, where we have to order parts, or we have to wait for street lights to come in, or whatever that might be. So we don't quite hit 100%, but we try. So you see, again, where the responses are, or where the requests are, is kind of the trend throughout all the years. 21. Again, same thing. Now we're up to over 1,000 requests of just garbage in the city, and that's 51%. That again, we use 311. That drives our work program. So we're spending a lot of our time just doing garbage pickup throughout the city, which reduces what we're doing in other areas, because again, we only have so many bodies to do the work. And so this is what we're focusing on, and we try to keep the city clean. We try to keep the graffiti out. And that you'll see on the next piece of this.
Had a long way.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So on the next piece of this, if you go to the next slide, is the opportunities. So we have what is called the City of Lakewood. We have an Adopt Street program, and we currently have 48. Well, it's on the next slide. I'll talk about that in a minute. So this is kind of the map of all the locations in the city that we do. The green areas are areas that have been adopted, and the orange areas are locations that we've identified that we feel are safe enough for a group to go out and do. We don't want somebody to be, say out in front of Classy Chassis up there on Custer. There's not real good sidewalk, access, not a lot of shoulder space, very busy road. So we're not going to, put somebody out on that street. We want people to be safe. So these are the spaces we've identified throughout the city as available. We have a pretty good group of volunteers. Like I said, on the next slide, you'll see we have 48, I think it is, active groups, and we have 60 total sites. So there's 12 sites available. If anybody has a group that wants to go out and adopt the site. And then how that works too is, you go through, you register your group, And, we have kits, boxes, so you get, when you go out and do the work, that has like all the volunteer registration forms, kind of instructions of what to do when you get out there. There's, signs that you have to put out, so people are aware that you're working there, hard hats for you. Pickers, garbage bags, gloves, and all that kind of stuff. And then when you're done, your leader of your group returns the bag or the box, and we can then, input the data as to what, was done. And then what we're asking people to do is put in your 311 that there's garbage bags at such and such location, and we'll go pick it up. Some of the groups, they take it home themselves. I'm perfectly happy with that. But recently, council, I think Mary might have done a presentation to council for, we added a group E component to the Adopt a Street. And what that is it's cover up, it's not cleaning, because we really didn't want to give people chemicals to deal with. And so there's cans of spray paint, different colors and things, try to color match as you're out there. And so, just covering up, on a pole or, a wall or whatever that is. And if you don't feel comfortable covering it up, or you don't have the right materials, then we ask that you put it in the 311, and it's all in the instructions, on the sheet. That's, been added. I don't have any good data on how successful that's been, with volunteer groups. Our guys go out and do that, as they see it. You can't do it every day. There's just not enough time, resource to do that on a daily basis, but we do it as often as we can, and try to keep up with that. But again, that's the Adopt a Street program. That's the 311 snapshot of what we do for garbage from the city, staff side. And then Michael will talk about the other collection dates. Any questions or anything?
I have a question about the app itself. Who monitors the app in terms of its functionality? Because a couple weeks ago, neighbors had a deer die in their yard, and both of us tried to upload that to the 311, and it wouldn't work. And I deleted the app, reinstalled it, still wouldn't work. And it doesn't, I don't think it works today, but
Well, we have a filter on it, so when people report dead animals in their yards, it doesn't go through. No, Bryn Grimley, she's the communications person for the city, and she would be the person we could talk to about, those types of issues. The company itself, Excella, is the company that the app is done through. They've had growing pains over the years. Kind of the 311 or the report, you'll see that in virtually every city and county agency around. 10 years ago, it didn't really exist. And so all the different companies that have this type of app available have gone through growing pains, and that's part of it. Is I know several months ago there was an iPhone, whatever Apple issue in integration, and that went on for quite a while. I think they've resolved that by now. You don't have to do it on your phone. You can actually go onto your computer and do it through there as well. Go to the website. If you go to the city website, there's a link to it to do from the computer. I've heard of that here and there that it's glitchy, but it's still, for us, it's a plus.
one other question is sorry, Mark. Is abandoned vehicles part of the garbage
That goes to the police. So again, there's under the 311, there are probably 20 to 30 categories, and they're done. They're when you select, abandoned vehicles, that workflow is set up behind the scenes to go to the right department and the right person in charge of it, and so they individually monitor that. So for me, I sit down at my computer in the morning, And I have emails, phone calls, and 311s. That's the first thing I look through, and then I talk to the lead for streets and talk to the lead of parks and just make sure they're on top of their 311s.
I noticed, not being able to get on there when they switched over to 5G. And some, devices like my iPad weren't upgraded part of it. And so I can't get on to 311 on that, but I can on my iPhone.
So that might be something that they're working on, and I would hope and assume that they're aware that that's an issue. That when 5G came out.
I have two, I have one that, so like Martin said, the signage, not so much for enforcement or response, but just as a deterrent. Has any discussion been made in these hot areas to maybe put up additional do not litter or it's unlawful or any kind of signage, again, just a deterrent to behavior?
No, we haven't done any, I don't believe there's any signage out there in respects to just garbage and reporting.
Yes, it is a reportable crime. I mean, somewhat law-abiding citizen may think twice before dumping something out of their car. If they saw something that they could be on the bus, not something that they would be on the bus. But that, and so, and another question, as far as responsible for what, in town center, you know, behind Safeway, that sidewalk, that is often covered with litter. So who's responsible in a place like that? Is that Safeway? Is that the city since it's in town center or?
And so 59, I only know it as GI Joe's and Bed,
Right.
Bed Bath Beyond, or whatever, that corridor.
Mhm.
So that right of way, the back of sidewalk is the city's. That's the only corridor through the town center that is the city's. The rest of that is managed by, I know there's two, there might be three, management firms and I want to say 59, it might be the cutoff of one firm and then everything on the other side of 59, the west side of 59 is another. But yeah, those are city streets.
So, I mean, there's times, I mean, I happen to drive in back way to the town center all the time, past City Hall. And, you know, that place is really junky sometimes, and it can be that way for a long time. So any idea on how to report that or say, hey, this needs, you know, this hasn't been cleaned up in a week or two, you know?
We get a lot of calls about that very thing. And my admin person has direct contact with management
Okay,
companies and she'll let them know. That's really as far as we can go with it. A more extreme example of that is there's stop signs that come out of the town center and bad actors, I'll say, turn the signs sideways
Right.
or around
right.
because they're on round poles and they're easily
Mhm.
moved.
Right,
We have made recommendations that they replace those poles. They have not, and there have been accidents, you know, because of the signs being turned and people not paying attention, and blaming the city.
Right.
It's kind of nice to want to say that I'm out.
I would say that major property on the town center, it's just changed. The folks that own the majority of the town center sold it to someone else. That's a very recent development, and the new company is starting to get things on the ground in terms of being able to go and do that. And folks from various sections of the city staff have talked to them and found them to be a more responsive group generally than the previous group. But they own about 40 of these things around the country, so that system, I just think to go and do that. But we're looking for some improvement of some certain things in the town center, particularly of upkeep and, some positive things. And, they've got a commitment to maintaining security that is commensurate with what expectations of their town.
Vegetation of blocking line of sight like on the corner, you don't have any control of every other.
Of making it stop growing, I had no idea. No, that is one of our 311 is vegetation issues, and we receive those and we'll go address them first by, the lead will go out to the intersection and look at it. And there are certain setbacks and requirements and kind of, it's not as simple as just going out and cutting the vegetation. There's a little bit more involved in what we would like to just, I just go cut it out, you know.
Put a bug in your 59th and, Gravel Lake.
Okay.
Is where it, I've been trying for 2 weeks to get a picture of it. Every time I stop there and think about it, there's always 5 cars behind me, of course. A few years ago, they trimmed the vegetation back there because the street's kind of a funny angle, and looking back towards Bridgeport is difficult. And then just recently, somebody had planted some pine trees out there, some little 3-foot pine trees, and yet where they cut that back.
If you plant it in the right of way, and
You go right next to the sidewalk.
yeah, sometimes the right of way is right at the edge of sidewalks, sometimes it's, you know, further back, so I'll check on it and gravel.
Yeah.
Within your heat maps, are there particular streets that are favorites for jumping, jumper?
Like I said, the darker streets, without streetlights, there are, I won't say favorites, but neighborhoods definitely, some more than others. The Woodbrook neighborhood, where, you know, a lot of that's been converted to industrial. Prior to that, it would be the low-income apartments that would transition people through, that people wouldn't take their stuff, and the apartment complex, even speaking with them, and I know that they've been talked to several times, they would just put it in their parking lot, and then each day it would, you know, work its way out to the street, and eventually that's where it was. Springwood is another example of that. So like Chicago, San Francisco, those streets in the neighborhood get pretty good. We have Springbrook Park that's out there, and the lower part of Springbrook Park is down there at the end of 47. That's a dead end, and there's a lot of garbage that's deposited there. Klein Street was a dead end road right by the Nisqually gas station that was a favorite spot because it was between 2 wood fences and nobody could see. We ended up putting a fence with a gate because there's some utility access back there, but you know, that stopped the garbage dumping back there. Yeah, it shifts around a little bit, but for the most part, what you see on the heat map is where the requests are coming from. And it is, unfortunately, it's the lower income parts of town that get hit the hardest.
Any more questions? Any questions? What you want to do?
Thank you. Anytime you have questions, you reach me.
I'm sorry, I did have one.
Uh-huh.
So we're looking, as you talked about the different neighborhoods and some hotspots. And I know a lot of the communities have, you know, where you bring all your trash in, like, cleanup days. Is there any possible thought to, doing some
That's a good.
enhanced, activities in those neighborhoods to help reduce that accumulation?
Enhanced activities in the neighborhoods. That's always a possibility. I think that's something that Michael has been doing a little bit of research and above what we currently do with the city collection days, there might be opportunities for that. It's a good segue. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Quick introduction. My name is Michael Vargas. I'm the assistant to the city manager and policy analyst here at the city of Lakewood. And I'm here to just give a quick overview of our Lakewood Community Cleanup Days. Sure, many of you are familiar with. So we host the city in conjunction with our waste management services provider, LeMay, or really AKA their parent company, Waste Connections. We host 2 community cleanup days a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And during these days, it's essentially a free dump day. Anyone who's a Lakewood resident can haul their own refuse to the Lakewood transfer station and dump it there for free. I have brought a little bit of data here just to show that, this is quite a popular event and it is widely used throughout the city. So going back to some pre-pandemic times here, in fall of 2017, we serviced around 787 vehicles. Looking at fall 2018, we had 640, in spring of 2019, 420. But to really put things in perspective, I'll go over the tons of garbage that were dumped during these days. Which looking at spring 2021 here, which is one of our busiest events, we had 63 tons of garbage, brought and dumped at the Lakewood transfer station. And of that, I believe 10 tons of scrap metal, which is, notoriously difficult to get rid of. During the fall 2021 event, which was the first one I worked at, we had 69 tons of garbage. And of that, we had 4 tons of scrap metal. So, in addition to the numbers of, vehicles that come out, I could say that working at these events, and talking with the residents, they are more than happy that this is something that happens, right? Dumps are, around the county or what have you, they can be a bit expensive, and having this free day to which you can, haul your own garbage to the Lakewood transfer station and get rid of it is very much appreciated by Lakewood residents. So it's one of the most common things I hear that, hey, usually dumps are pretty expensive. It's not worth it that I take my garbage, there. I have several garbage vehicles, work loads, and I have to go back to the dump over and over. It's awesome that the city hosts a day where you can just come in again and again and get rid of your refuse that way. So yeah, I think this is a really popular event here and it's definitely, a staple of the community every year. So yeah, that's all I had.
What does it cost the city to do that?
Really, so it's not really free. It's built into the rates of Lakewood customers essentially, right? So these 2 events are stipulated in our contract with Waste Connections that, they provide the labor, they open up the transfer station and, help out with community outreach as well. We do our part with community outreach, through our social media site. We also send a, little postcard out some events, so it's built into the contract with the service provider. So essentially, folks are paying for this, and yeah.
So the residents of the city are basically subsidizing that.
Yes.
Yeah. I'd rather see it there than.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but when we worked through the budget on the last time the contract was updated, that particular cost it didn't move the needle much in terms of what the rate would be. Because while it is of value to the city and to residents, it quite frankly also had value to LeMay to be able to do that and collect a lot of stuff in that way, as opposed to trying to pick it up piecemeal, particularly having people break things apart and three consecutive pickups, dump it into their green containers and do that and things like that. So that, there wasn't a big, well, we're gonna have to charge more element when we asked them to do that and initiated it. That what they did ask, is they did ask us to allow them to have significant input into how the day work. Okay, and, you know, because they're paying their employees to do it, but they really sort of do it as a value to them, value and value to the community to do that. So the biggest feedback that I think that I and my council members get is 2 weekends a year is nice, 4 weekends a year would be nicer. Now that would be probably then there probably would be a cost. The 2 weekends was negotiated significantly when we did the last garbage rate contract.
Can I clarify something on that too? We have city staff to go out and work those when we do those, and we check IDs. So it is only open to Lakewood residents. So people coming through have to have a Lakewood address, either with an ID or power bill. So it is only we do our best to verify that. And the other thing is it's not open business. So we do have like a roofing company come through with a bunch of stuff, even if they are a Lakewood business. They're not allowed to do that. It's only for what's considered residential.
Roofing company, waits a few hours to start because of our road.
Right. That's for reference.
They travel out to Fredericks and then properly disposed.
The worst part is it's slow. I just had to do that one time, I thought, oh, well, early in the morning before everybody gets up and does it right. I got stopped between the Inverse Clover Park and Lakeview Drive. Lakewood Avenue, Lakeview, where my shop is, 4 hours from there till I got it done.
So if I may, you may have attended the spring 2021 event, which was probably the most massive turnout of all of this. I think maybe estimates upward more than 1,000 vehicles. For whatever, I mean, you know, this is coming out of the lockdown. It was a nice day, nice weekend. So a lot of factors, I think, you know, made it so that, yeah, that occurred. But usually it is a pretty manageable event. The last 2 events, I think we managed to have, well, another thing is that we only have, the residents have to dump their own refuse, right? So, the Waste Connections workers don't help out with that. So that sort of manages the sort of loads that folks bring, right? And we managed to get folks from, you know, driving up the ramp, dumping their stuff, getting out, and less than around 5 minutes is what we timed in the past 2 events. So that's another sort of feedback we've been getting, is that, hey, you know, this is a really convenient event, right? You know, in and out like that. But yeah, I would say that spring 2021 is definitely an outlier in that regard. So yeah.
Any good questions?
How many people can dump at a time with all that? I know the ramp.
Yeah, I think bay-wise, probably a good 5 to 6 vehicles at a time, but it never gets, at least the past 2 events, it didn't get that busy.
So they're allowed multiple vehicles at a time.
Yes,
Because with the Waste Connection vehicles and our vehicles, like they're only allowed 1 at a time. So that's good that they're allowed.
oh yeah, definitely opened it up and, you know, Waste Connections folks help out with the coordinating too, because you have to back up a pretty steep ramp. If you're not used to that, they're there to help out, so.
Yeah, I have a question, and either one of you, what do we do in a situation where I had a lot of stuff float up to my property, I'm like still in them, I live on there, I still have a stump that's, I mean, it's big, and I managed to eventually get it out of the water. But I mean, these things are hazards to people skiing, wakeboarding, boating, period. But I mean, I have had wave runners float up to my property, all sorts of stuff to float up. And I usually typically tie it off, pull it out, somehow try to get rid of it. In fact, I think initially the police can collect the waiver on it and took it away. So, but, I try to track down the owner, but I guess the question is for all the people, you know, have a shore property and stuff that floats up there. How do they handle it? Just 311, can you come remove this stump? From, I'll tie it off to my pier until somebody can remove it, or, and by the way, it's waterlogged, so it's generally quite heavy to get out.
Yeah, you're not gonna like my answer. When it's something that floats up,
Yeah,
the private property, or a deer dies in your yard, it's the responsibility of the property owner.
well, I mean, my bounce back, you're gonna be push it back out the lake, and then it becomes your property, and that's not the right thing.
Right.
You know, I mean, so the fact is, I'm trying to do the right thing by
And I,
preventing a hazard out the lake.
and I think when you said earlier, the police, I know on American Lake, they have, when there's a hazard out of the water, so they tie it up and they brought it up to
Right.
American Lake Boat Launch. I don't know as far as what they take out on.
It just depends on the size of, because we can't get our bigger boat out onto Lake Silver. So it depends on the size of the debris, and the, how much of a safety hazard it poses to other boats.
Well, again, you know, if it's smaller stuff, debris, and it's burnable, I usually just pull it up and put it in a fire. Dries out, that's true, usually free fire.
Yeah.
But there's bigger stuff that, like I said, I mean, I still have a stump between my neighbor and myself that's been sitting there, and I just haven't bothered to split out. But I just know that stuff does float up. And, you know, there's different components. It's not always natural. It's a lot of it's man-made material that floats up. And it is a hazard. I mean, I've seen parts of dock float up there, and you just don't, unless you're out on it, you don't realize how much of a hazard that debris
You'd
can
be
be.
surprised at how many, abandoned docks
Yeah.
end up at American Lake Park that have to dispose of.
Oh,
There's only a certain number of people that have docks on the lake, you know, I mean, so where did it come from? But, you know, nobody ever knows and.
well, I guess the question is, you could try 311, say, I've got a set here, of dock number such and such, and see if someone can, willing to come remove it.
Yeah.
Or in some cases, you can actually move it from the lake up through the private property to the street where it can get up closer to the water.
Yeah, and that might be, an avenue to go. We really try not to go on the private property, as public workers to do that type of work. So if you put a 311 in, that there's a stump up on the shoulder of the road.
Yeah.
How did it get there? We don't know.
I'm just, like I said, if I go to the next lake meeting, I just want to be able to express to the property owners, hey, look, if you can pass- again, like I said, I've dealt with it, a lot of different things, sometimes, for the most part, I take care of myself, I don't want to get lost options.
Yeah, and it is an issue, we have lakes, in Lakewood that things float up and, we don't want, water hazards out there, so, things that are brought up to the park, we handle, and once in a while, things show up at Florida Park. But that's really the limitation as to what we're seeking out.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Thank you very much. We appreciate your time. We'll probably be hearing from you.
I guess, can I ask a question in the group, maybe?
Sure.
So one of the things that when Joanna asked me to come was there was a program in Tacoma you guys were looking at or that you've heard of. Can you share a little bit about maybe what their program is?
That was Teresa, who is not here.
Okay,
She was the one who specifically brought it up and said that she was hoping to do that. So kind of what started this. But she's not here, so she can't speak to it. I will say that what I found on their website seemed to be a mix of Adopt a Street and the trash pickup days, the big days. So essentially they picked days and the community would go out to the neighborhoods and compile all the trash and then drop it at a communal site. And the city supplies all the supplies for that. That's what I got from the, it's like a tiny paragraph on their website. I'm not 100% positive that's what Teresa was talking about. That's where that all came from. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
We like ideas.
Right.
Yeah, one of the things with the Tacoma is because their trash collection utility is in-house, they can motivate them to do a variety of things.
That makes sense. Okay.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
our next item is city council liaison moment.
Let me, just, I really have only one real item that I want to report on. Deal with things that are more departmental, but, the city council, did get the result of the annual community survey that was conducted this year. We were able to go and do that. That asked questions across a broad area of things. And, the way that is able to be evaluated is that the 2022 survey was essentially the same survey that was done in 2017, which was the same survey that was done in 2015. So one of the values of doing these particular surveys is that you can look for trends in certain things, and essentially it's the survey asked the 10,000 foot level questions. Okay, it was conducted in two ways. One, there was a scientific selection of residents that were chosen to represent all of the police districts that were used as the map to guide things around. And people who were selected were then sent a survey, sent a link to the survey, and reminded to do the survey to do that. And then secondly, the survey was opened up to the general public who could access it online and can do that. So you got two sets of results, and I guess that are, the first thing I would just say is those two sets of results weren't significantly different. But there was a section of the survey that particularly addressed public safety. And I would go through that said that first of all, the things that were most improved 2022 to 27 is the public perception of fire department and of how animal control was going. Most of the other things stayed very much the same. The rating for what percent of people feel safe in their neighborhood during the day was 78%. It was 78% in 2017. Felt that they were safe in the business areas, it was 75%. It was 78% in 2017. But a couple of areas that had some low percentage, and again, this is from residents, were that there were crime prevention and went from 47% thought it was going well to 37%. And again, that's over that 5 year difference of the span. you can imagine a lot of reasons of why that is. I think it wasn't that there was less emphasis on crime prevention, but I think that there were some other things that caused crime, particularly property crime, to be on the rise, and that's, to be honest, for most people, what they experience or hear about, in most cases, is property crime, and that's probably where that is. But there were 3 new questions that were on this survey that weren't on the 2 previous surveys. One was, do you feel safe from property crime? And we got an answer for 44% of folks who likely felt they were safe from property crime. Then there's a question that says, are you safe from violent crime? And 52% of folks in Lakewood said they thought they were safe from violent crime. And then there was a question that said, are you safe from natural disasters? And 78% of the people said they felt that they were safe. Maybe it means that they're having trouble imagining natural disaster. Mike also took the survey results because they were able to look at some demographic information about respondents, to take a look within our diverse community. What were the differences between the folks that identified themselves as the white Caucasian population, people that identified themselves in one of a number of other entities that would fit into the broad Black, Indigenous, people of color category. He did a really good report on that, and in many cases there wasn't a lot of difference, but in some cases there was. And rather than just run through and recite a bunch of numbers to you, I'm going to look at getting put together something that's specifically related to the public safety question, to look at both what the overall survey said, as well as Mike's analysis of those questions about where was there a difference in terms of the percentages for Black population versus the white population. And it was sort of interesting because in some cases the BIPOC population had higher satisfaction numbers than others, others less. So it's worth having some analysis that we're in the realm of wanting to make sure that we're serving everybody in the community and being perceived in the same way within the community, within public safety, and within the other 12 categories the survey looked at. The whole survey and the whole analysis is, if you went online, you could go to the July 11th study session agenda for the city council, in that whole set of results and analysis of the results that Mike did. It is there to see the whole thing, but we'll get an extract, a public safety abstract, to Joanna to get out to do that, and maybe it would be generate some questions to be able to go and do that. It also perhaps has some reference to what you might expect to be given that this is a survey of residents, and we're thinking about doing a survey of businesses, about what do we want to expect, and do we want to benchmark business perceptions against resident perceptions?
This was done online. Were you happy with the response?
Well, I guess there's sort of two parts to it. It's a little bit complicated. So for the scientifically accurate survey, it was a random sample. So I think there was about 2,700 households that, you know, a physical piece of mail was mailed to. And of that 2,700, I believe 1,500 households just received, you know, traditional paper copy of the survey. You could then fill out and then mail back to the researchers, posted paid. With the other 12, including in that, was also a URL link on a post, which, you know, you can decide to take it online if you wanted to. But then the other 1,200 households just received that URL link, which, you know, that was to cut costs down and increase the number of households to reach out. And I believe we got around 288 responses this year in 2022. Doesn't sound like too much, you know, it's around 11% of the 2,700 that were contacted. But in all 3 survey years we've done in Lakewood, that was the highest amount we've received back. But you know, there's always room for improvement for, you know, having households respond and all that. But yeah, I think the researchers did state, you know, maybe that is about on par with what you would expect with, we only reached out to 2,700 households, right? If you were to increase that net 10,000 households, what have you, be more expensive, but you know, we have an even more accurate survey. Yeah.
How were those households?
They were chosen at random. I'm not exactly sure how they did that, but it is a random sample. Yeah.
It was some algorithm, but essentially, again, they use the police district. And then they use the population in the police district, and then they ask the algorithm to choose the same percentage of population from each of the districts. I think that one of the things that we found is there were a couple of districts that are particularly lower income, according to the census, and the percentage of responses to those districts, even though they got the same proportional to the population, number of people selected, so the response rate was lower than the 11, and then there were, then that means that correspondingly there were some other districts where it was higher. And one of the recommendations that Mike made to the council is that we tinker with that the next time we do a survey, and that we choose those districts, we choose a higher percentage of the population to try to do that, although it's,
So you had 2,500 households. 4,700.
2,700.
And out of that, how many total responses?
288
Total
out of all police districts, yes. And I believe out of police districts 2 and 3, Councilmember Bressa is referencing to, I think combined, oh gosh, I think it was around like 2% and 6% response rate. I forget which one exactly, but that was incredibly low. Even researchers say that's a very low return rate for a geographic area. And I believe almost half of all the respondents came back from, I believe it was Police District 4, includes like the Lakes District, forget the other neighborhoods.
The business district, it's the town center in that general area.
So, but again, just another sort of technicality here, despite the sort of lopsidedness, they were, you know, researchers, and it's industry standard to apply again another algorithm to make results statistically accurate. But then, you know, then again, you would want a larger pool of respondents, so you're more representative.
and you know, we're a city with a population of 60,000, that 2,700 households is probably gets you to close to 15% of the population and average of 3 point something in a household. And I think the survey asked for a particular person in the household to answer it.
Yeah, it's sort of another trick we deploy to make it a random sample. You ask for the person's birthday closest to some arbitrary date, fill out the survey. You have to be over 18 now. It's another component to that. So yeah, one person per house.
So, and I guess that we got, again, less than a month ago, we got the results, that, there was some discussion about, do we want to do the same survey from the same company a 4th time, or do we want to go somewhere else to someone who's doing a survey and do it, meaning that you're getting a new baseline to compare the past survey.
James, do you have a question?
More comment, just a little perspective on the study. I do remember from last time, it was there, we had a little bit more response this time than last time, but it was still 200 something people. Not much in the way of actionable items, I don't find from a police standpoint, it comes out of it. One of the interesting things, well, 2 things. First, it did not ask, were you the victim of crime? You know, or did you have to call 911? So there's no real frame of reference for, you know, what was your actual experience or involvement in crime or with public safety in Lakewood. The other thing is, there's the categories. Do you feel safe at home? Generally, yes. Do you feel safe in the business district? Generally, yes. Do you feel generally safe? And that number is actually lower. So if you feel safe at home and safe in, you know, your shopping and at work, where is it that you're at that you're feeling that makes you feel generally unsafe? Yeah, the police department. So like I said, I have found it a little less than productive, and it just doesn't give us anything actionable. I don't know from a council perspective what they can glean from it, you know, in some of the other areas, but from a public safety perspective, I find the study to be a little bit lacking in something that means anything.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, part of like feel versus like you say, can you give me some events or situations, you know, and then you could probably say, oh, I feel generally less safe in public because it seems, especially the news era, things seem to be a little more violent. But how do I work on? How do I resolve it?
Well, and you just named the big one. Yeah. If you're talking about how people feel, there's a lot of things that impact that beyond what we are in control of. And a lot of that is social media, mainstream media, you know, news media, things like that, that when you are inundated with the next thing that's going to kill you all the time, you're going to feel safe all the time, regardless, or unsafe, regardless of what your actual personal experience is. So that's, I remember this conversation last time we did the study, and I just like to bring up those little points of perspective when we think about it. Thanks, Alan.
Chief, is there a place where we can access or get some good information when police show up at a neighborhood, specific neighborhood, and we're trying to figure out what's going on? They don't tell you sometimes what's going on. Right. As a matter of tell you the doorways of your business. But it's your neighborhood and it's a closed gated area. How do you deal with it?
You can call and talk to me, and I can look. I mean, you know, call and talk to the police department. Call and ask. You know, I can talk to you. What we would have to do is evaluate the privacy interest of the people that call versus the public safety interest of the neighbors, as far as what might be playing into there. There could be medical components, mental health components, a lot of things that are protected by privacy issues, but we could still maybe say there is a public safety component or there's not.
For timing and making sure that other residents know that we've got a fairly active, at least informative network. So And when you don't know and you can't find out, it's kind of hard to tell people what's going on. If you don't have good access to what some of the issues might be.
Right.
For instance, 2 weeks ago, Prowler, 3:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock. And this was a bonehead, some of the people that were involved in it, left the vehicles unsecured. They were unlocked and people went and took stuff. And what ensued after that, throughout the course of the next 24 hours, people explaining what happened and how they had come and asked for help, and then they'd gone out on their own, done their own little Dick Tracy deal and found the items at an individual's place and, actually confronted the person. And then the person there, and then 3 nights later, another incident occurs, and the guys, here, the police come and check out, find an individual prowling. And when they apprehend him, he's got a weapon, a concealed weapon on him. So you want to make sure that everybody knows and that everybody understands what's going on, so that no one really gets hurt for doing bonehead type things. But you just got to get that information to people quickly, and don't see how we don't know how we get there. That's it.
One of the questions we can do if there's an officer on scene, I mean, you can ask some of the questions, maybe not specifically, but is there a public safety threat to the neighbors or to everybody else? Or is there a suspect we should be keeping an eye out for? As opposed to what's going on in the house or, what can you tell us? So those, that the officer should be able to share that.
And in this particular instance, we didn't have to ask the officer. The people who did their own investigation found him because he used a credit card of one of the people. They went to the place where the credit card was used, actually accessed the video, got the picture, and that's how they found out where the guy is, and that's where they went to confront him. So that's why, based on all that information, like I said, and they found their stuff, but he has no idea how it got in his garage. So I mean, but that kind of stuff, it's just, you don't have to ask that. Well, you can ask, but you got to figure out how to help curb some of that, so someone doesn't really get killed in the process of they're trying to play vigilante. Well,
the unfortunate situation is that we did lose a resident who came out to engage himself in an ongoing situation and ended up being dead, being killed in a situation that an officer was trying to resolve.
Right, to clarify, that was somebody that rammed an officer, and there was an active pursuit, and the guy came out of his house with a shotgun and fired at the person that was fleeing. So a little more engagement than we would like to see from our community.
Anything else?
As you talk about this statistics, I was involved in all that for a long time. When you start, and it would be possibly called skewing it to capture maybe the low socioeconomic population or get more out of them, that tends to skew somebody else out of the light. There was I was at a very important scientific presentation, one of the big stars, and he got to talk about his research on cancer. And he said, in the end, 33% of our animals in the test got better, 33% didn't change, 33% got worse. That much getting better is great. Somebody asked him afterward, what will you do in your subsequent experiments? And he says, we'll try to use 4 to 3 mice. You have to watch the context. But that population thing, I've gone down to see the jury of my peers in court. It's frightening. It's often classified as people that are retired, have no life, or have a grudge. They get the jury full. When you start sorting all this out, surveys, and I did some of the different set of populations, you get a response from people that aren't the cross section where you took your slides. It's often very skewed again. I don't use telephone surveys before they started spamming everybody because I didn't want to waste some time. You get stuff and they lose still now with so much spam mail. If it didn't, mine is, if I don't know what's in there, I don't even take it home, I throw it away. So it's a very hard task to figure out how to get something in a representative. It's very important to define how you got it. what the councilman's reported here, there's a lot of definition of how it's captured, at least you can try to interpret it yourself. But it's a very sensitive issue, capturing the numbers in the way that's useful. And some people go at it knowing what they'd like to see it come out to be. So they ask their questions with great precision.
Okay, to the council, how about fire department comments?
Hey, everybody. I apologize for not being in there in person. Mr. Williams, in regards to Lakewood Town Center, RPAI just got bought out by Kite Realty. So if you have any issues with some of the private businesses there, I've been working with Matt Barker. He's been really helpful with some code enforcement stuff. If you send me an email, I can kind of make the introduction. We've been working with him on some code enforcement stuff. Not too busy of a July. In total, West Pierce had 1,521 calls. 1,059 of those were in Lakewood, which resulted in 497 transports to the emergency room. I did read you guys' agenda last month, and I know you guys were working on fireworks safety. And the study you guys had encompassed July 3rd through the 5th. The one I have is the 1st through the 5th. So if you guys need some numbers, I can kind of adjust that. But over that 5-day period, we had 166 calls in Lakewood. 4 of those were loosely related to firework calls. They're kind of hard to track down sometimes because the information we have, sometimes we don't get that dispatch information. But one of them was confirmed, which resulted in a minor injury. And then we had 1 commercial, which ended up being accidental. As far as the non-suppression side, with community risk reduction, fire prevention, code enforcement, we've done 253 plan reviews to date, which is tenant improvements, commercial mechanical, submittals, new construction, residential tenant improvements. So over those 29 fire-related calls, only 4 of those were involving structures. Any questions so far on any of that stuff?
Any questions?
Oh,
No questions?
you're good so far.
Okay. Sorry, audio's a little bit hard. As of July, we had 27 overdoses. Currently, our battalion chief, Mike Willie, is working with Department of Health. They're trying to narrow down the field to figure out which one of those are opiates or other related drugs. We did start participating in the Narcan delivery program. So we'll have some numbers and see how that's affecting the community here a little bit later. And in regards to the violence, 31 traumas were found when I did my report through RMS. 3 of those had associated with violences. It's kind of hard to track down the information on these calls because you would have to go individually through each patient care report and read those to figure out what the narratives say. But we are implementing a new program called ESO here. Hopefully, we're going to roll it out in the next few months. And it has a lot more dynamic search fields, which is going to allow us to narrow down those and get you guys some better numbers. On the good side, it's as far as July, National Night Out just wrapped up. I was up there myself. I think we had a pretty good turnout. Everybody seemed pretty happy. And I think the feeling I got was everybody was joyed to be outside finally, at least mingling with everybody else. We've had Summerfest. Sounds like that was a crazy time for our community risk reduction side. We've sold a whole bunch of life vests and helmets, which is always good to see. And we just wrapped up our second safe sitter class since we opened up our stations and started loosening up our protocols. And both of those classes were full with, I believe, 18 participants.
Anything else?
That's all I have, unless you guys have some questions I can answer for you.
Questions? All right, getting off easy. No questions.
Okay. Well, always here to help.
Okay.
All right. First thing, again, I texted Bryn after you mentioned my Lakewood 3 and 1 not working. She says on her end right now, it's working fine. So I don't know if it's a Android, Apple thing, but if you want to check again tomorrow, maybe, or you can email me and I'll connect you with Bryn and see what maybe is going on. So a few things with the department that have been sort of that we've been keeping an eye on. And we just did our second quarter report, and really we're zeroing in on thefts, on vehicle thefts and retail theft, or shoplifting as being our two drivers for our overall crime rate. Vehicle thefts are still, they've come down a bit, but they're still at a historically high level. We did, in cooperation with the auto theft task force today, recovered a new stolen Bronco that was stolen yesterday, and the people that were in it were at the RV show down at the Tacoma Dome, and they had in their possession a ring full of stolen RV keys. So,
What was it, keys?
keys
Oh.
from, the RVs weren't stolen, just the keys. They had gone through and figured out where the keys were and stole all the keys for these RVs, undoubtedly with the plan of going back later and stealing however many they could. And that really underscores what I've said, repeatedly over the years, is that especially with property crimes, it's not just one person for one crime. It's usually one suspect for about 100 crimes. So getting somebody like that, getting our hands on them, does take a big dent out of our auto theft rates and therefore our overall crime rates. With retail theft, we do have an emphasis that's going on that we're doing periodically, where we identify our businesses that are experiencing the highest loss, or the most incidents, rather. And we have unmarked folks parked out in front, watching and working with store staff. And we have our marked cars around the corner. When the theft takes place, our folks move in and are able to catch them in the act. And we book them into the Nisqually jail. So it's not a catch and release. There's actually some immediate consequence for what they're doing. And so far it's been successful, and we recover thousands and thousands of dollars of merchandise for the stores. And more importantly, word about that travels amongst these groups that are committing crimes. And if they want the path of least resistance, and if they think Lakewood might be waiting outside to catch them, it can have a deterrent effect, and that's what we're hoping. So that's currently what we're working on. We'll get to fireworks in a minute. Hiring, I don't know how many of you saw on social media, but we graduated 7 folks from the academy recently. We got 2 more up there, and we just brought on 3 more, 1 lateral and 2 entry that started this week. So we're going to have people in the academy and new faces around here for a while. In fact, I looked through some numbers today, some interesting stats for those of you that have been around a while. We started as a department in 2004. There's only 1/3 of the department today that was here when we started in 2004. 2009, when we lost our 4 officers, kind of the defining incident for our department. Over half of the department was not here in 2009. So what's a personal tragedy for a lot of us is just, it's an historic note for, some of our newer folks. So hiring has been a constant for us. We're having a lot of success hiring. It's just a matter of getting all those folks through training and out on the street so they actually count. I don't like, they don't like to hear that they don't count yet, but that's the truth of it. Their moms still love them. That's it.
And their paycheck still.
And their paychecks still count. So, yeah. Any questions on that before I talk a little bit about fireworks? Ken?
I have, backing up a little bit about the car that you said it was, the vehicle was stolen at the Tacoma Dome?
It was found at the Tacoma Dome.
Oh,
It was actually stolen from a residence down in Silicon.
Okay.
It was a brand new Bronco that was in a fenced backyard, and the owner happened to be gone, and some ne'er-do-wells do that.
With as many vehicles being stolen, when does the market saturate?
Well, they're not being resold. There isn't like that's what's interesting, is there's this question about, what is happening to these cars? They're typically late nineties Hondas, and more recently around here, some Ford trucks, but for the most part, they're being used as transportation or traded for bill. And then we recover them, or, quite frequently they get recovered and returned to the owner of trash. But, there's always going to be the market out there. It's not a matter of controlling the market, it's a matter of controlling the people who are out there contributing to it.
And the vehicles that are typically stolen, is there a reason they're being stolen other than their Hondas or whatever? Like if their windows were open or the keys are there, what?
It is, there are times when it is, just easily accessible and they leave the keys or have the windows open. But, a lot of times, like with the late nineties Hondas and more recently, the Ford F-100 or F-150s and 250s, somebody figures out how to steal them and then tells all the other car thieves. And so that becomes the hot car, just because people know how to steal them. Yep. So it's just a matter of knowing how to steal them. I remember back in the early nineties, it was the 80s Monte Carlos that were the big stolen car. And I still remember this day that, you pop open the column and there's literally a button there that you push to start the car. So it was that easy. So once it gets figured out, that gets shared, and that leads to more cars being stolen.
But how are they accessing? Are they just smashing windows or?
There's that, or either smashing windows or they're being left unlocked. Yeah.
Did you incarcerate the person that took out with the keys for
Today?
the keys for their orders?
No, we did not. We could not, part of that was, this person had been in the system so many times that he knew exactly what to say, exactly, what not to say. And we couldn't get to a threshold of probable cause to get him into jail. That's just a matter of circumstance. They weren't in the car. The car didn't, because the people that stole the car had a key fob. They had burglarized the house before, took a key fob for it. And so there wasn't damage to the car where we could say, well, this person obviously knew it was stolen. We had surveillance video of the people that did steal the car. That's not who was found in possession of it. And then the keys was, well, I found them on the ground. So it is, even as much as all of us sit here as rational adults and think, well, that's clearly, a lie. It doesn't get us to the threshold of probable cause for booking on us.
Before you move from that, I hate to follow that story with this, but I was in Lowe's about 10 days ago, leaving through the contractor, which has got the big wide bay to go. And all of a sudden comes rolling from 100-yard start almost the back of the store with this loaded up cart. This guy's just flying, blows right into the cashier line, knocks me and my cart over, and flies out the door. And 3 employees go like this. They did everything but wait. He's going, what's the deal? Oh, he comes 3 or 4 times a week. And he and a partner load this thing strategically, most of the stuff and drills and saws, and just comes plowing through. What if I had anticipated in time to disrupt his path?
You would have had to have known that that's what he was doing. Otherwise, you're picking a fight with somebody because they're moving fast through the store. There was an incident in Gate Harbor a few months ago where a guy thought that somebody was stealing, pulled a gun on him. There ended up a fight ensued, and he ended up shooting the guy. It turns out the guy wasn't stealing. So, I mean, you really have to know what you're intervening in, and think about what the worst possible consequence would be.
And having 3 employees say he's a regular at this, we have the basis to do that.
It would not. That'd be, if the employees aren't intervening, it's hard for you to justify them.
I'm following halfway across the lot to see if I can deter him to do what I did. I see all I could have done was get in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you look at the employees care, the store care, they're not intervening.
Business wise, Lowe's would say not much to that because of the liability aspect there, and that's why they don't allow it. employees to go down and that after the liability aspect. One would rather lose the property. Than go through the license.
Lowe's is one of the stores that, we're working with on our retail theft emphasis, so we're gonna get out there and hopefully make a little bit of a dent in it.
One of the parking lot cameras really good.
I don't know, because the stores do those independent of us.
Well, so they don't share, if someone has to share that. with
Oh, no, they do, but they don't put them up, or they, they don't call and talk to us about putting them up. They do that on their own, so it's hard to know when they're up and what they're doing. I would think they'd have a deterrent effect. But we would have to, I don't know, it'd be hard to track the statistics on the impact of that
Yeah, the insurance and the forensic aspect afterwards.
afterwards, right?
And one of the employees said if the door's closed, they have to open it for them. And another doing sarcastically, I'm assuming, and say, thank you for stealing here today.
All right, so a little bit about fireworks. I did put together a little memo that I had sent to you all that had some statistics about the last 2 years. One of the reasons I put that together is because our fireworks ordinance was such a topic of conversation over the past 5 years or more. And that through your work and the council's work, there was an amendment done to our code that was passed last year, didn't technically go into effect until this year. But we started our educational process last year. So I included last year's numbers and this year's in the comparison to the previous 5, I think. And it was really, all we can really look at is calls for service. That's really as far as a metric that we can look at to try and see what the impact was of the new code. Without a doubt, there was fireworks being shot off on the 3rd and on the 5th. And maybe some on the 2nd and 6th, but I was out on both those days and clearly fireworks were being shot off. We did go around when we got complaints or saw it and tried to educate people again. But we didn't do any of that on the 4th. We just let the 4th be the 4th. And when we pulled call for service, what we saw was for the last 2 years, there was a decrease on all 3 days as compared to the previous 5 years. Weather was not a factor because really when you went back, and I just pulled I don't remember the name of the website, but I looked at the weather for the past, for each of those years. And it was very consistent on all 3 days for each of those years. So that wasn't a factor. But calls for service on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, fireworks related calls for service went down on all 3 days. The biggest reduction was actually on the 4th, and that was a 37% reduction in fireworks related calls for service. It's possible that people were more tolerant because they knew that there was a code change and they weren't allowed on the 3rd and 5th. It's kind of hard to say. That's something that we experienced was a reduction in calls for service, and that's really for the police department the biggest metric we can look at. I think the fire department has their own different metrics we can't talk about them for fires on those days. But I do think if you want to evaluate the effectiveness of it, there's a couple more years of data gathering would be in order to see if the trend holds true and maybe if there's even anecdotal evidence of a reduction on the 3rd and 5th. So with that, that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions about those or anything else police work.
Do you, even though it's a reduction, is there any data or any feeling about how much, was there more fireworks on the 4th? Just people were more tolerant? Do you know?
I don't know. And I would actually, I would defer to all of your experiences. You've all lived in the same houses in the same city for a while. What did you experience on the 3rd and the 5th, or even on the 4th in your own neighborhoods? Did it seem less? Did it seem more?
Yeah.
Coming up with the 4th, there was some that was way less than the 4th, and the night after was really pretty good. I thought it made a huge difference.
Okay.
We put out information for 2 days. Put that information out to the network and
Not where I live here at the park.
Uh,
And both sides, they go out the front door and there's just a skyline of fireworks, go out the back door and all the gravel laborers.
I live, well, you're just about Diane, but, and the fourth was far heavier, my perception was far heavier. The third and fifth were lighter.
I agree with it too, and my neighborhood was exactly the same. In fact, there were people blocking the streets with their truckloads of stuff. I drove around, took some pictures, I was like, those guys.
on the fourth, you mean?
On the fourth, did I say?
No, you got it.
Fourth, yeah. But the two previous, the day before and after was a little lighter, but man, on that day, it was crazy.
It was continuous.
Yeah.
Continuous, so I think the last one went off, 1:30 o'clock in the morning.
Well, I mean, the goal was to reduce on the third and fifth, so.
Yeah, they didn't buy any less, they just blew it up all up.
They put it up a lot faster, which I appreciate.
We needed for the fireworks in one day.
Yeah.
I did see something recently in the news, we were talking about, specifically about fireworks in the city of Lacey. And how they've reduced it down to like getting like 4 calls or something like that or, because I think there was some public information put out stating that, hey, we're not going to respond to these nuisance calls on fireworks because it is not allowed. And I think there was a dramatic, I mean, like a severe, call specifically for the fourth. You may want to engage them on what it was, but I just remember picking up on hearing about it. Because when they talked about it, I thought they were going to lead into Lakewood.
Oh,
What
yeah.
we just passed, but they referred to Lacey instead.
Oh, interesting. Okay, thanks.
On one topic, did the interview with Molly's family get broadcast? I never saw it.
About our 2 recruits?
Yes.
Not yet. She was on vacation this week. And is going, well, one of these weeks. She was going on vacation right after she put the story together, and it was gonna air the following week or something like that, but she was gonna let me know. So once I get the date, I'll let all folks know, but no, it's not aired yet.
Thank you. Okay, any more questions? I've got just some information I'd like, I belong to an Alzheimer's support group. When it came up in a meeting today, they were saying that it would be good for, primary caregivers to, notify the police and fire department that there is somebody in your residence who has Alzheimer's. Possibility of placing medication, a list of medication someplace where the EMTs, if they showed up, could find them. And so my question is there some apparatus where I could call and let you know, or let the fire department know that there's somebody in my house? One of the things that brought it up is the guy, wife all of a sudden decided to take a walk. And went out, he was in the bathroom, she's gone, and we looked for an hour, and finally came back to the house, and some of your officers were there, and she had ended up at their neighbor's house. And so they were saying, that's nice to let the police department know that there's somebody in our household that has Alzheimer's. And so I don't know, is there,
It's good, like if you call 911, and there's a loved one in your house, or we have to go there for whatever reason, there's somebody there with Alzheimer's. But there is no mechanism for us to keep a database of people with Alzheimer's. In fact, I think it'd probably be illegal for us to do that because of medical privacy. Yeah, so, but if you do have to call 911, certainly let the dispatcher know, and then they would pass that on to the officer, go to the fire department. And the fire department and the medics, I'm sure, would appreciate having a readily available list of medications that the person is taking. Looks like the captain was
Yeah, Chief, if you guys ever get a chance to go out to any of our community events, whether it be National Night Out, Summerfest, our prevention division hands out these little magnetic stickers, which are called the Vial of Lives. And it's a place for you to write in medications, allergies, pertinent medical history, and it'll stick right there on your refrigerator. And then any advanced directives like DNRs, living wills, we like those posted on the fridge too, because our crews are trained to go in the house. And sometimes we look at the fridge because that's where people will keep their insulin or whatever medications. So, or if you put a call into our headquarters station, we can find a way to get you that Vial of Life sticker, and we'll try to include more of those in our community handout resources.
Thanks, Matt.
The other thing they were wondering is, you guys get training from the Alzheimer's Association on dealing with Alzheimer's patients?
Not from them and not specifically on Alzheimer's, or just on Alzheimer's, it's sort of encompassed in, the, array of, mental health conditions that we might have to deal with. And the training, the crisis de-escalation training, and that we, is mandatory training for us now, it's encompassed in some of that.
I have a neighbor who has severe dementia from a stroke condition. And she was calling 911 like up to 9 times a day. And as well as wandered off, so I'd come over to bang on her door regularly. So it always said she was locked out. She wasn't. I told the responding officer that she had firearms. And she always talked about having firearms. I have no idea what they did. We said, be careful.
Right.
And I presume that they secured it in some way, but I was somewhat concerned.
Well, it would depend on the circumstance, and legally, even in that situation, there's only so much we could do. She would have to be presenting an immediate threat, for us to go in and take their guns. The other option would be for us to apply for an emergency protection order, and have a judge say that we can go, get her guns. But those are a little tricky as well. We can't force our way into a house to do that. So some of it is a matter of them surrendering. So it's, that is, I can't give a blanket answer on how we would respond to that.
Yeah, it was usually the same 2 officers each time.
Right.
So I just thought, well, they have a number if they walk in.
Right.
And sir, in regards to the medical component with Alzheimer's, we also just hired a connected care coordinator too, through our department. And their position is to take some of those people who need some more resources and get them connected through Franciscan, Molina, or multi-care. And so we're hoping it's making a dent, and she's working a lot of hours right now. So she's making a dent as far as what we're seeing.
What did you call that magnet? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it clearly.
It's the Vial of Life.
Vial of Life?
Yeah, it's a little magnetic kind of burgundy sticker that'll go on your refrigerator. Most fire departments have a similar setup.
Matt, if they walk into any West Pierce station, will they have them?
Our headquarters station, Station 20 will, and then I will get to work tomorrow and start distributing them out to the stations. And then we'll try to keep, also, they can just call Station 31, and any of those folks will get them in touch with the prevention division, and we can find a way to get them the resources they need. It may take us some time to get them stocked up, though.
Any more questions? Moving right along, unfinished business. We have requested by the city council to do a business public safety survey. Mark has prepared a draft of that, that the subcommittee is working on. I'd like to table discussion of that until we see the results of this survey.
Okay, well, certainly we could do that, but in the interim period of time, the folks that are working on it, Mike and then they'll be the most knowledgeable survey creative evaluating person that we've got on staff.
We'll invite them.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have a meeting with the city council next week. And if everyone had a chance to look, so our conference
accomplishments year to date? Do you have any comments? No comment? Is everyone planning to attend? It'll be next Monday evening at 7 p.m. You're all cordially invited. Is that right?
Yes.
Council?
Council.
Brianna is asking to give her a head count, so if you guys don't mind, do you think you're gonna go? Can you let me know?
We're attending next Monday, 7 p.m. You will raise your hand at the office.
5.5? Okay, thank you.
I should be paying anybody to go for.
I'll let you know.
Okay. Anything, report from the, review of our next meeting. Joanne, you put down September 7th. I think our next meeting is something. This is August, it's gonna be October.
Sorry. Yep, that would be correct.
I don't know what first.
October 5th. My apologies.
October
I really like September, so.
5th. Anyone can come in September.
I may not be there.
Okay. Okay. Reports on community outreach. North Lakewood, canceled the meeting on the 27th. Okay. Some logistic thing going on. Any other reports? Rainbow is still, reporting, meeting mainly online. We have a face-to-face in time.
I had identified some Summerfest. Been doing this piece act for years. Always a struggle whenever we put this thing on, we get the staff and support. Well, not, I could say for a couple of years it was, it may not have been James and a few other people did the stuff while I was away for a while. But you really shouldn't, as a group, commit to this thing unless the bulk of us are going to staff it. You know, Joanna went around about 4 times trying to get claims filled in. I put my name in 12 places where there's only 10. But there has to be a conviction, a little bit of dedication. If you're gonna sit here and vote for the bloody thing, you take your calendar out and you block it. It's not high tech, it doesn't take training, except for moving the trailer, which is James does it, I do it. And I can see reasons why law enforcement and fire might have had trouble finding their volunteers. You got swamps. In most cases, short staff, but if this group, which is a fairly contained group, I mean, we're mature people, we're able to do things in life without oversight. If you say, put the hand up, we're gonna do some of this, the bulk of the folks are right then, put that note down that you're gonna be contributing to it some. Alan and I run around trying to make all the things work. And I just felt like after doing this for years and years and years, sitting here silent, maybe the only reason people don't understand, if you vote for one of these things, you need to be thinking about you're gonna be part of the solution. It's not just for 3 people to make it work. So I contribute that. I apologize. I haven't done it for years past because a couple years wasn't bad. But that was kind of ridiculous. And I went and rented this device and I forfeited part of the deposit. I had no problem with that. It's a donation to the cause. But Joanna probably has to spend a lot more time than she needs to trying to figure out how to fill blanks. She does a lot of that stuff in silence, but chief employee and cohort and executive assistant, he needs to have his executive time to run stuff and chasing down rabbits and jumping holes. So, and I know the department beat the push too. There were several things that didn't work out. Maybe it's just a post-pandemic malaise, but if we're going to put these things on and make them up in the future, if we do things that are charitable, whatever, it ought to be a thought that, you know, I work Saturday and Sundays. As soon as I said I was going to do this, I blanked it. I think there's more people here that could have done it, so it's disappointing. Thank you.
Our next activity will be fallen officers, food and whatnot. Usually there are volunteers that go up to that. So, the date gets set. Please consider that.
Okay, real quick, jump in, and I hate to throw this out with schedule, but the October 5th meeting, Councilman Branster, that's one of the nights it's scheduled for budget presentations at 6 o'clock. So for department heads to the council. So that, with that, I mean, is it your meeting? It got sent to me on my calendar, so, I obey.
That's the police department budget.
I believe so. So, but I did, yeah.
That makes that a inconvenient day.
But I will confirm that, that it is indeed my budget that's going that night. And let everybody, I just wanted the group to know that there is that conflict that would be for both Councilmember Branstad and myself possible.
What about if we postponed our meeting for 1 week, well, October 12th? What does that take? Why don't we wait until we know what the?
Your other option is to use Joanna's September date and then have a meeting in November. And not have one and not have one in October and December.
So when will that October 5th date be?
I'll have an answer tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, I just need to check with, our finance director and our city clerk and see what the plan is.
Okay, so let's count it with the 5th then,
Okay,
and if,
we will communicate
if
tomorrow.
October 5th is confirmed for you, then we can change.
Okay.
Okay, any other business?
Just September 5th is Labor Day, in case you go to that fallback date.
It was the 7th, but it is due after Labor Day, so yes. We just had Labor Day on the brain.
Any other discussion?
Sorry, maybe.
Any other?
For the report section, I was saving for that. So I got a bunch of these for you guys. So that you can hand them out to your neighborhood association meetings when you want. I can get you more. I didn't know how much interest there would be. I had these, WAPA and the Puget Sound Audit Task Force. Printed out a bunch of flyers. July was vehicle theft. The vehicle theft prevention month, I think is the official title. So they had all these flyers made, some posters, and like I said, I can share more if you think that your neighborhood associations would want them, you want to pass them out. But I thought at least a couple, so you could show them. You need a couple?
So that I can just send this out.
Digital.
Right, have digits, I mean, oh, right. Yes, let me look at, I know I have it, let me see how pretty, I can easily make it pretty.
Is the marking, the etching of the catalytic converters, has there been any data showing that that has been as a thing?
Not yet. That's really too new. Yeah.
But there's some King County that are saying on a small number sample that the bad guys already learned how to grind that off. And there's a number of the receivers who don't really look hard. Small pool, a predictable number.
Was some of that a lot bigger this year? Or was it not me? Which part?
Why didn't they do that?
I thought it was a ton of people.
Mark, the catalytic converter, the law is that you have to, the people that are taking them in have to get the identification of the person bringing it in. So regardless if they grind out, it doesn't really matter if they figure out the way to identify, is that right?
Yeah, but without those numbers on there, there's no other identifying number. on
Also,
it.
they wouldn't be able to know.
Yeah, there's no factory stamp on there for like a serial number.
Well, if the same guy comes in with 5 catalytic converters.
Right. If you were a disreputable recycler before the law went into effect, you're going to be a disreputable recycler after the law. went into effect.
Where'd those come from? No, they weren't here yesterday.
Everyone garage.
If there's no other discussion. Like a motion. I move the adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Question.
Take care, everybody.
We just have an issue.
Sorry. Everybody hears this, right?
I was, it's not very.